So here we are back on that Ferguson TO30 tractor. This engine is a Continental Z129 engine, and we're pretty much right at the same point that we left off at the last time. So we've got the valve cover off, we've got the manifold off that we had taken off last time. The only two things that I had taken off were those two bolts that hold the water jacket onto the top of it. So that can come off when we lift the head off of it. Now we're going to be removing the rocker arm assembly. So this engine is an overhead valve type engine, and the rocker arms are what actually acts on the valves to make them move. So the camshaft pushes up on lifters, which push up on these push rods right here. We've started loosening the rocker arms. That's why this one is loose right now. So we'll be taking off these 4 bolts that hold the rocker arms on, and then we'll be able to access the head bolts, which are underneath it, and then we'll be lifting the head off. One thing that we did find with the head gasket when we just started looking at it, something that you don't normally see, but at the seam where the head gasket is, there is orange RTV gasket maker that is not normally used on head gaskets, so that was kind of cause for concern.
Makes you believe that someone may have taken this apart before?
Yeah, someone had definitely taken this apart before and either tried to reuse a gasket or something like that. That might actually be our problem. So hopefully we can find something that's pretty simple and pretty cost effective to fix. So down on the floor right here, what we have is a piece of cardboard that's labeled front and rear for the engine. So all the parts, as they get taken off, are going to get laid out through there. And right here, this soda container, what we have with that is holes cut in it where we're going to put all of the push rods so that we can keep them organized from front to rear. You can see that it's labeled front and back as well. And it'll just help us keep everything organized and make sure everything goes back to where it came from. Also, before working on the cylinder head, you can see that we had opened the block drain on the side of the engine block to let the coolant go out to a level that is definitely below the level of the cylinder head. You can set that down right there. Make sure it's facing the same direction it came off. Okay, so my assistant is just setting the rocker arm down, and we're keeping everything right in the order that it came off, so that we put everything back on, it goes right back in the exact same place. Now what we're going to do is, with each individual push rod, we take them out one at a time and we put them in order in our soda box. Obviously, there are better and more expensive ways to do this, but this is cheap, quick, and easy. Even if they lay down a little bit, we know the order that they came in because that's the order that they're actually stuck into the box. So now we've got all of those off. Now we're going to begin working on the head bolts themselves. So we'll be using a 1/2-inch breaker bar for this and breaking these loose. But just getting back to the block drain, we drained it through the block drain instead of the radiator because the block drain will, first off, the radiator drain didn't look like it was going to come out real easily. Second, it doesn't really matter to me if we get all of it out of the radiator, but I wanted it to get down in the block low enough to where we didn't have to worry about coolant running into the cylinders when we lifted the head off. We will still get a little bit of that, but we don't want to have a whole bunch of it end up in there. So while the head bolts are coming off over on the right side, over on the left side, we had to take the left side head bolts off, which are head nuts off, which you can see down at the bottom. And we also marked the spark plug wires so we know which one is which when they go back on, so that we make sure that we have our right firing order when we go to try to start this later on. So once we get all of these bolts off, then we'll be able to lift this up and then lift the head off of it. Everything else is out of the way. The only thing that we're going to take off are these little caps that are on top of the valves, that are on top of the valve keepers, to make sure that none of those get dropped. They come off pretty easily, so that's something that if they do get dropped, we just have to make sure that we find them. One of them did go down one of the push rod holes, but we should be able to reach that with a magnet. And we'll retrieve that after we get the head off, which should be in just a few more minutes. So now, with all the cylinder head bolts out and the water jacket lifted up out of the way, we're going to put a pry bar in underneath the front of the head and make an attempt at prying up on it. Because of the former gasket material, it's probably somewhat glued down there. So we put a pry bar in, and we're starting to get a little bit of distance between the cylinder head and the block, but it's still a pretty tight fit coming up over all of those head studs. So we're just going to need both hands here for a minute. To help it slide up a little bit, I'm going to be just using some rust penetrant around the studs, just to lubricate those studs a little bit and allow the head to slide up. You want to get that side? Or no, that's no, never mind. There are no more on that side. Okay, so now we're going to try rocking it back and forth and lifting. It's heavy and awkward.
That's the thing. The best spots to like get it up from are the ones on one side.
Mm-hmm. This may require some rocking back and forth, but it will go.
Can we move the little drip pan?
Yeah.
It hits like a stop or something.
Okay, so our cylinder head is lifted off now. And next we're going to lift the gasket off, which, as you can see, has a pretty fair amount of gasket maker on it. This is something that is not normally done with head gaskets. I don't know why that might have been done, but it was coated on there pretty heavily. So the next thing we'll be doing, we'll be checking all of our surfaces to make sure that there are no problems. It almost looks like there might have been some compression blowing back and forth between cylinders. If you look at this area right here, which is discolored as compared to the rest of it, there might have been some compression blowing back and forth between cylinders. All the pistons look good. They don't look as if there was any coolant going into them or anything like that. They all seem to fit the bores pretty well.
Bores don't seem scratched up either.
And the bores look to be in pretty good shape. So the next thing we'll do is go over and take a look at the head. We'll flip that over and we'll look at the gasket surface on that. A quick look underneath the cylinder head shows things to be overall in pretty good shape. We can see that we had new spark plugs in it, and it still wasn't running much better. So that was why we decided to go deeper into this problem than that. I still believe right in this area here there may have been some leakage between the cylinders, which might have been causing some compression issues. So for right now, we've got it taken apart. Next step will be to get it all cleaned up and find out exactly what we have. So we'll have to do a whole bunch of scraping and find out exactly what we have. And then hopefully we'll be able to be putting this back together, hopefully with just a new head gasket. So stay tuned for the next installment. Thank you.